good, beloveds? It's Tuesdays with Tawana. Yes, I am very late. I normally record on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. Today was a rough day for me, so I am recording on Tuesday at 10 o'clock, sticking to Tuesdays with Tawana on Tuesdays at 10 today. Welcome to Tuesdays with Tawana. I am Dr. Tad, your host and your curator for this vodcast turned podcast. You can find this podcast on all of your podcast platforms. You can find this on the YouTube channel where I am going live for the first time to see how that works and to see, how much traffic I can get on YouTube. I have taken a pause from Facebook and Instagram for a moment so I can regroup and yeah, figure out what I want to do with social media. But in any event, we'll get into that in a minute. But if you are joining me for the first time, welcome. If you are listening later for the first time, welcome. This is a space where this Black woman speaks and creates space for community. So if you watch live, you can comment and I will insert your comment into this narrative. If you watch it later and you put comments, on YouTube or on any of your podcast platforms, I will respond accordingly. Whether you agree, disagree, have questions, have comments, your voice is welcomed here. This is a Black-centered space, a Black womanist space where we center Black women and Black beloveds for our liberation in hopes of liberation for all. And we talk about everything from health to what's going on in current events to relationships. We have guests sometimes. Uh, this is what we do, and this is how we show up. And I'm popping up today because just full transparency, as we always do in this space, I was not in a good space today emotionally because shift happens, and sometimes we have an opportunity to sit in the shift, right, and sit with what is happening to not necessarily embrace what's happening, but to acknowledge what's happening and then think about what lessons are to be learned. What are we to pull out of the shift to prepare us for the outcome of the shift? And some of you may be hearing this for the first time because, again, this is my first time going live on YouTube. I am a metastatic breast cancer survivor in active treatment. I am also a domestic violence survivor, and I have a PhD in leadership and change, focusing on womanist ideology and ontology and epistemology as we address and combat anti-Black racism. So you'll hear me talk about Black stories and things that impact the Black community. And it gives us a teachable moment on how to center ourselves. And even though we are decentering whiteness, we are not decentering beloveds of color. Beloveds of color can take this type of platform and this type of approach and use it to center their voices and their stories and their cultures. So since I am a Black woman, born and raised in Harlem, and our voice is often either ignored or silenced or marginalized. I come and I speak unapologetically as a Black woman for Black beloveds. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Shift Happens as we are closing out Mental Health Awareness Month, but that does not mean mental health, the quest for mental health doesn't end with May. Just like breast cancer awareness happens in October, but it doesn't mean it starts and ends in October. It's 365, 24 by 7. Domestic Violence Awareness Month is October, and it doesn't mean that it only happens in October. So, um, you'll see the ticker across the top of the screen, and it always has yeah, I'm doing it again because I did not change the title, and I don't mind um changing it live because shift happens. um so you'll always see the domestic violence hotline scrolling across, and if you're listening, the domestic violence hotline is 1-800-799-7233 or 799 safe, and your suicide lifeline is three numbers, 988. So you dial 988, and you'll be able to receive the support and the guidance and the help necessary if you find yourself in crisis or know someone that is in crisis. So, um, as I acknowledge mental health awareness, along with my breast cancer diagnosis comes some mental health challenges where I am learning to live with anxiety and depression by taking care of myself, by eating certain foods, by exercising. Right now, taking meds because that's what's needed. I see a psychiatrist, and I'm very transparent because I want others to be transparent. There's no shame in getting help for the things that we are faced with and challenged with. And because shift happens and I am differently abled, I need to make sure that I have the tools necessary to deal with the shift that happens because stress can kill me. Worry and shame and guilt. Um, and all of those things that don't work well for my body, it cancer loves that. Cancer feeds off of that. So I must remain in a posture of not being phony and not dealing with the stressors, but it's like having a moment of fear, having faith that's larger than the fear. The fear, sometimes it draws us closer to faith. It draws us closer to removing ourselves from a dangerous situation toward safety, toward self-care, toward self-love, toward learning the lesson. So it's not necessarily the fear that is the bad thing. It's when we make fear as evidence appearing real, and we start making up these things in our mind that where the fear controls us, and we make decisions rooted out of the fear instead of making decisions rooted in faith. So I have to do the work necessary to be ready when shift happens, to be able to handle it, to be able to cry, to be able to talk about it, to be able to feel all the feels, and then to come out of it as a victor, to come out of it as one who has learned the lesson, to come out of it that one as one who has been refined, to come out of it as one who is strengthened, who is, and not talking about the strong black woman trope. That is not what I'm talking about. That is not what I ascribe to. But there comes a time when there are times when I need to be strong, and there are times when I am in a weakened state. It doesn't mean that I embody that weakness, but the a weakened state helps me to be amenable and flexible to what's happening in the world, what's happening to me, what's happening when shift happens. It's not a negative thing to be in a state of weakness as long as we're moving toward strengthening ourselves and getting the courage. So when shift happens, what is the shift? Why did it happen? Why is it happening now? And we may not get the clear answer because just as a woman of faith, I am also an ordained, retired elder, itinerant elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And what I have learned is that we may not get the answers from a higher power that we want and when we want it. But the faith comes in the trust in knowing, like, you know what, you did it for me before, you brought me through before. I am 8.5 years into this thing, and it tried to take me out twice. I've had multiple surgeries. I have had multiple treatment plans. I am on my one, two, three, fourth treatment plan, and I'm still here, able to do this podcast and vibe with community, which I love so, so much. Um, so we may not get the answer when we want it. And we may not particularly care for how we're being led to the answer, right? It's like, God, couldn't we have done this a little differently? Um, but the key thing is to be able to acknowledge it and know where your gaps are, to know where your blind spots are, so then you can surround yourself with people that are going to help you fill those gaps and to help you remove the blinders, speak truth to you, to support you, to hold space for you when shift happens, because it's going to happen. Change is inevitable. Change is going to happen, whether it's a change in evolving or a change in action or a change in the way we learn or a change in behaviors. As we grow, we should change. I, as a 54-year-old Black woman, should not be doing the same things that I was doing when I was 24. I should be doing 54-year-old things, right? I should have learned from past behaviors and doing things differently. So now when shift happens, of course I'm going to have a moment, right? I'm human. I have feelings. I'm going to have a myriad of feelings, whether it's anger, frustration, shame, you know, uh anger at operating outside of myself, making crazy decisions or best decisions at the time, which ended up not being the best decision, and having some grace on myself, doing the work to have grace, doing the work to love myself with unconditional positive regard. That means that love has no conditions. It's just, I love you because I know you and I know your heart and I know how you get down and how you show up in the world. So I know this is out of your norm. I know this is out of your normal space. So, what is happening in your world that I can help you with to bring you back to your essence, to bring you back to a solid place, to bring you back to your womb or your soul or your spirit so that you can hear from God and hear from God in other people, because we are human and divine. So it's a both and. If you are experiencing this moment for the first time, when I talk about both and, it is antithetical to whiteness. Whiteness is either or. Whiteness is linear. Whiteness is only one way. When we from the Black diaspora and beyond, we are a both and. We are a full people. We are divine people. Um we are communal people. We operate in community, which is why I do this podcast every week, every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, because not everyone has the access that I may have. I have access to beautiful theologians, scholars, big sisters, aunties, mothers, sisters, daughters, my own children, my own grandchildren. I have access to scholarly work as an academician, as someone with a PhD. While I was in treatment, spent 6 years, seven in total, because I had to finally take a year off to take care of myself, but earned my PhD and now use it to build community. And I have an arsenal, if you will, of access to people, places, and things that other people may not have access to, that is life-giving, that is affirming, that is forgiving. And I want to share that with community, which is why I do this podcast. And then it invites other people who may have a bit more knowledge and experience than I have. And I meet those beloveds and I sit at their feet and learn what it is to live this life as a Black woman, and to insert my voice into a narrative that is often silenced and ignored. So I co create this space for us to have conversations. So, to continue up with shift happens. So I did a thing today. I just, I said this, I deactivated my Facebook and my IG for a moment, because I was losing myself in social media. I was either, too spending too much time on it when I should be running my businesses, whether it's my nonprofit, whether it's my for-profit, my publishing company, my clothing line, all of those things I could be given time to, and I was given too much time to social media. And I want to do a shift. I want to rebrand and, you know, show up differently with social media. I just don't want to show up just too much exposure. There are some things that people just don't need to be um, privy to. That should be for my inner circle. So I share my story for the good of all, because I want you to know this is a face to a survivor of domestic violence. This is a face to a thriver of breast cancer. This is a face to someone who grew up in Wagner projects in Harlem. This is the result. Is what good came out of growing up in Harlem. This is what someone who has an opportunity to experience sisterhood looks like, and trust and affirmation, and falling and making mistakes and not being the mistake, but making a mistake and learning from that. White people will call us a mistake. Like, when people are incarcerated for whatever reason, they call people prisoners and felons. No, you are imprisoned. You committed a felony, but you are not that thing. You are not that mistake. And that's a shift that we need to make in our language. Another shift that I offer to you that we should make is removing or using discernment when we talk about the word just. Like, oh, I was just calling you to say hello. No, just minimizes your action, and your action is quite magnanimous. It's quite beautiful when you pick up the phone and call a loved one to say hello. It's not just, it's not a minor thing, it's a major thing. Honor that. Even if you talk to someone or you're leaving a message or a text message, don't minimize that by saying just, oh, I'm just going to the store. No, you're going to the store. You have the means, you have the opportunity, you have the right. You are a beautiful human being doing human things. So don't minimize that. I'm just going on vacation. No, you deserve that vacation. You have a right to rest. Rest is your birthright, just like joy is your birthright. So removing that word just can also be used as just, as in the root word for justice or justified. And we should be careful with using that, because white people feel that it's justice and justifiable when white people are killing Black and brown beloveds who are unarmed, who are sleeping, walking, jogging, playing in their grandmother's black backyard, um, coming from the store, playing in the park. So they justify that. So just being mindful that when we use that word just as in justice, that we are very clear about what we are talking about, and we are not justifying bad behavior, or not everyone has a right to justify bad behavior, heinous behavior, like the genocide happening in Palestine and in Sudan. Sudan needs our help. Tigray has been going through an internal war for, it might be 3 or 4 years now. They need our help. Haiti is going through it. Congo, they need our help. And though it is just for us to do that, whether you have $20 that you are contributing to a reputable organization, that you know where that money is going directly to the people that need it, and not to the salaries of the people, and then only $1 of your $20 makes it to the people that need it most. So when we talk about shift happens, it's shifting our mindset, shifting how we approach life, shifting how we look at ourselves, shifting how we look at ourselves in the diaspora, shifting how we honor ourselves, shifting how we love ourselves first, shifting how we love each other with unconditional positive regard, shifting the concept to Ubuntu, I am because you are, shifting because we are collective beings. We heal in community, we find liberation in community, and we don't do it in isolation. That is whiteness. When we do it in isolation, like picking ourselves up from our own bootstraps, we don't do that. We don't ascribe to that. We don't ascribe to, it's all about, I gotta do this, I gotta have the power. We are about shared power, because there's more than enough shared power to go around, so that we all can eat, so that we all can survive, so that we all can put people in office that have our best interests at heart, even though the political system, period, wasn't created for us to begin with. But we're going to work with what we got until we can change the system, like the Constitution wasn't for. So shift happens when we are involved, and we're being intentional about the shift, being intentional about what we have learned, being intentional about making sure that we do things in community and not in isolation, even when we do stupid shit and we fall short or make mistakes. You are not the mistake. You are not the thing that has happened that is adverse to your well-being, and you can do something about it. You and your community can do something about it by shifting in a way that gives you love and light and positive energy, and surrounds you with positive things. um I was listening to someone, I won't say his name, because he can either be a genius or he's batshit crazy. But it was one thing that he said about a magnet, and how, even though we ascribe a magnet to attracting certain metals, it's actually expanding. So it is expanding the bandwidth, if you will. It's expanding the essence. So when we attract others to our well-being and our quest for liberation, we are expanding our power. We are magnets. We become magnets to that which is for our best interest, versus when we don't love ourselves, we tend to attract those that don't love us either. Because if we don't love ourselves, how can we teach beloveds how to love us? How can we teach beloveds how to honor us and respect us, if we don't do it and don't have the language for ourselves? So when shift happens, it's important that we learn the language of the shift. We learn the outcomes and the language of the outcomes of the shift, so that we don't repeat bad behavior. This is why white people don't want to talk about when they enslaved us. They don't want to talk about the heinous history of the start of this country. They want to continue to hide behind lies They want to remove books that are enlightening. They want to, still um, feed us with inerrant history lessons, um, because it protects them and protects their power and keeps them, their shame and their guilt hidden. They don't have to atone for anything. So there will not be a shift unless we call that out, like Jesus had to call out the demons, had to name the demon to call it out. I use another example. If I have a cut on one arm and my other arm is broken, I'm not going to put a band-aid on the broken arm and the cast on the cut. We got to be able to identify the shit. We got to identify the adversity. We got to identify the stuff that's happening to us and be able to make that shift, to come together and to make the shift, because we got to define it, we got to name it, then we got to change it, and then we got to enact it. Because other people, if we're waiting for other people for our liberation, it ain't gonna happen, beloveds. That's why I ascribe to womanism, because womanism teaches us to look to ourselves for our own liberation. And if you down for the liberation, I don't give a fuck who you are. If you know how to center black beloveds, and ride for us for our liberation, I'ma rock with you. I'm a rock with you. I don't need you to culturally appropriate anything. I don't need you to want my beauty and not all that comes with it. And we are not just rooted in pain, beloveds. We are rooted in joy. Like all these white people, they want to run to our rescue when people are killed, and they want to donate, and once that is out of the top headlines, the white people disappear. I don't want you only during our pain. I want you in our joy. Help us to get free. And if you're not going to help us, then we just going to take it. That's the shift. We're going to have to take this thing. So as we embrace the shift, understanding that it's not easy, and sometimes the steps toward the shift is not easy, and we can do it in community. We're survivors, we're thrivers, we're divine, we're magical, we're mystical, we're brilliant. We can deal with the shift, but we must deal with it together. Hence why I do Tuesdays with Tawana, to posit some information, to laugh, to bring joy, to talk about current events, because you may not see these things or hear these things on the news or any type of media outlet, because it's run by white people. And overall, and this is not for those listening for the first time, it's not that every white person is bad. It's white ideologies and white thought and white supremacy that is a problem. And as we can see now on the Supreme Court, you don't have to be white to have white supremacy thoughts. So it's the white supremacy and the oppression and the racism and the wars and the genocide, this false sense of power, this power narrative that's power over instead of power with, that we must dismantle to ensure that this shift happens for an egalitarian society and for us to get free, motherfuckers. Get free. Come and get free with me. Shit, let's get free. Let's do this thing. This is Dr. Tad with Tuesdays with Tawana. I will see you next week at 2 o'clock. We're going to come and play around with these different platforms, going through some rebranding and doing things, because I would love to reach the masses, because I love my Black beloveds. So, peace and love. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. And I will see you next Tuesday, 2 o'clock. You can catch this on your various podcast platforms. I usually repost this on LinkedIn, and it'll come back to Instagram and Facebook eventually, but I just need a minute to rebrand and figure out what I'm doing and why am I doing this in this social media space. So I love y'all. And I'm out. See you next Tuesday. Later.